I remember the exact pitch of my daughter's voice when she called me that afternoon. Not loud, not hysterical, just small, broken in a way that made my hands go cold before she even finished her sentence. "Mom," she said, "Dad says I'm not really his." I was standing in my kitchen with a dish towel in my hand. I remember setting it down very slowly, the way you set down something breakable. "What do you mean, baby?" I asked her. He said it wasn't a joke. He said I should ask you the truth. I told her I loved her. I told her to stay where she was, that I was coming right now. And then I did something I am not proud of, but I will not pretend I didn't do it. I called my mother. Not my husband. My mother. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, underneath the shock, a door I had never opened before had suddenly creaked. People think betrayal arrives all at once like a slammed door. Doesn't. It arrives in small increments, in details so minor you talk yourself out of noticing them. Looking back now, I can see the whole trail. At the time, I only saw fragments. It started 8 months earlier, with a locked drawer in my husband Daniel's study. He had never locked anything before in 12 years of marriage. When I asked him about it, he laughed it off. "Work stuff," he said. "Boring contracts. You'd fall asleep reading them." I let it go. I had no reason not to. Then came the phone calls. Late ones, taken in the garage with the door shut. I asked him once who he'd been talking to. "Just Marcus," he said. "From the office." But I knew Marcus. Marcus's voice was loud enough to hear through walls, cheerful, always laughing. This voice, the one I caught the edge of through the garage door, was clipped. Careful. It didn't sound like a friend. It sounded like a man being managed. Then there was the morning he came home from the bank looking pale. And when I asked if everything was all right, he said, "Fine. Just moving some things around." I didn't push. I trusted him. That's the part people don't understand watching from the outside. Trust doesn't collapse in an instant. It erodes so slowly that you keep standing on it long after the ground beneath it is gone. The final piece, before the phone call from my daughter, was smaller than all the rest, and yet it was the one that stayed lodged in me. My mother had called a few weeks earlier, out of nowhere, and asked me in a strange, careful voice, "Has Daniel been in touch with your father's old lawyer?" I told her I didn't think so. She went quiet on the other end of the line for a moment too long, then said, "All right. Never mind. Just curious." In the tone of someone trying very hard to sound like she wasn't curious at all. I didn't understand the question then. I understood it completely 3 weeks later. The night after my daughter's phone call, I did not confront Daniel. I want to be honest about that because I think it matters. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I made dinner as though nothing had happened, put my daughter to bed with extra gentleness, and told her, "Whatever it is, it doesn't change how much you're loved. Not for 1 second. Then, after the house went quiet, I went into his study. I want to be clear that I was calm doing this. Methodical. I did not tear through drawers looking for a fight. I went looking for the truth the way you'd search for a splinter, carefully so you don't push it in deeper. The locked drawer was easy enough once I knew where the spare key sat, tucked behind a row of old tax folders. Inside was a manila envelope, and inside that, a lab report dated 6 years earlier. A paternity test. Our daughter's name on it. The result was clear, printed in plain black text. Probability of paternity, 99.998%. He had known the truth for 6 years. He had never doubted it for a single day. Beneath the test was a second folder. This one had a name on it I recognized instantly because it was my father's name. My father, who had passed 3 years earlier, and who had left behind a modest trust for his only grandchild, to be released to her directly at 18, administered by a family lawyer, untouched by either parent's hands until then. Inside the folder were letters between Daniel and that same lawyer. Recent ones. Daniel was requesting to be named interim trustee, citing instability in the mother's household, and concerns about the biological clarity of the beneficiary's parentage, as justification for an emergency review. He was using a lie he had manufactured, about a truth he had already confirmed years ago, to gain control of money that was never his to control. I drove to my mother's house that same night, the folder on the passenger seat like a passenger of its own. She opened the door already knowing I think why I'd come. She didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Sit down, sweetheart," And Métis neither of us drank. Did you know, I asked her, that Daniel was trying to get control of Dad's trust? She looked down at her hands for a long moment. Your father's lawyer called me a month ago, she said. He wanted to know if there'd been any changes in your marriage. Any instability. I told him no. I didn't know what he meant at the time. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. You knew something was wrong. I suspected, she said quietly. I didn't want to be the one who planted doubt in your home if I was wrong. I understood that. I even forgave it eventually. My mother's silence had been born of caution, not betrayal. Daniel's had been born of calculation. The full picture came together over the following days. The way a photograph develops in a darkroom, slow and merciless. Daniel's business had been quietly failing for over a year. The late-night calls in the garage had been with a bankruptcy attorney, not a coworker. The bank visit had been to move funds out of joint accounts before I could notice they were gone. And the paternity claim, the cruelest piece of all, had never been about doubting our daughter. It had been a lever. If he could cast enough public doubt on her parentage, he believed he could argue in court that I was an unfit, deceptive mother, weaken my custody standing, and step in as the responsible parent seeking to protect a trust meant for a child he had proof for 6 years was his own. He hadn't set out to hurt her. She was simply the easiest tool within reach. I confronted him 2 days later. Not with shouting. I laid the paternity test on the table between us, along with the letters to the lawyer, and I said, "You've known for 6 years. You just needed her to doubt herself so I would look unstable enough to lose." He didn't deny it. He simply said, "I was going to fix it before it went too far." You already broke something, I told him. The one thing you didn't need a lawyer's permission to protect. I filed for divorce within the month. I informed my father's lawyer directly, in writing, with copies of everything Daniel had sent him. The interim trustee request was denied within the week. My daughter still asks me sometimes quietly, almost testing the water. He really is my dad, though. Right. He is. I tell her every time, calm and certain. That was never a lie. But love isn't only about whose name is on a piece of paper. It's about who stays steady when the paper gets complicated. And I will always, always be the one who stays. People ask me now how I managed to stay so composed through all of it. The truth is simpler than they expect. I learned somewhere in that quiet hour in his study that panic makes you loud, but it rarely makes you right. Calm, on the other hand, lets you see clearly enough to find every piece of the truth, lay it out in order, and walk away holding all of it, instead of being buried beneath it. I did not lose a husband that year. I lost a man who had already left long before he said a single word to our daughter. What I kept, what no lawyer and no lie could touch, was the steadiness to protect her through it, and the quiet certainty that I would never again mistake silence for peace.